Now this tank here has been pretty well constantly losing fish and has been a huge battle with algae for a really long time. Now just recently we've started adding Ultimate Aquacare's phosphate remover. At this stage we haven't seen too much difference. We'll just have to keep adding it, because if the rock's absolutely full of phosphates, then it can just take time, and you need to slowly up the dose until you actually start getting a result, in which you can start reducing the dose again. But I actually think that the main reason why this tank's losing its fish could just be a lack of gas exchange. So when you actually look at the top of this aquarium, it's got a lot of water flow, but there's just not enough water flow facing up. There is a nice little bit of agitation there, but the rest of the water is relatively flat, or it was relatively flat the way that it was positioned before I came along and started playing with that power head. So basically you've got a bunch of fish and they're all producing CO2 and consuming oxygen, and you've got heaps of algae, and this algae is going to produce oxygen and reduce CO2 during the daytime, and then at night time, due to photosynthesis, it's going to produce CO2 and reduce the oxygen. So it works in reverse at night time. There's also a filter, and the filter is got a plenum that's very well established, so there would be a huge amount of biological breakdown and oxygen reduction in there. And then there's a light that is run on different times, but not necessarily opposite times to the tank, so we're not really getting a huge amount of reverse photosynthesis. In a perfect world, we run the sump light when the main light's off and the main light when the sump light's off, so you're getting reverse photosynthesis. Once this tank's really well established with the phosphate remover, you'll find that this algae won't grow anymore, because your algae will just be too low, because your phosphate will be too low, but that'll give it time. So the first thing I want to point out is it's really important that you don't have sealing lids. Make sure that there's some sort of gap where the oxygen can get into the tank, and make sure that all your power heads are facing up. So what we're actually doing, we don't want to create masses of micro bubbles or anything, so you don't need it to be too much, but you're trying to make sure that your power heads agitate the surface as much as you can to make sure there's plenty of gas exchange. Because if there's not much gas exchange in the aquarium, what happens is your oxygen levels are going to deplete at night time, and your CO2 levels are going to build up, and then it will go in reverse during the daytime. So that fluctuation of oxygen and CO2 between daylight and the night could cause trouble with not only your pH, but really affect the fish. The fish need to have fairly stable and high levels of oxygen and stable and low levels of CO2 in order for them to thrive. So I think that once there's a huge amount of surface agitation in the tank, as there is now, I don't think there'll be any degassing problems. And without those degassing problems, I think the fish will then start to thrive in the tank. And I'll check in with this video later on once there's been time to see if that was the case. Anyway, if you've got any comments, just whack it down on the bottom of this video.